Who are the young people that are just going out for the kicks? We want to have a good time. Then there are other young people that are bored with life. The struggle for survival is no longer there. But the biggest problem of all is the search for purpose and meaning in life. The question of identity. Who am I? Why am I on this planet? Whether you agree or not, the Bible is the one book in the world that tells you the answer to the problems that you face and the purpose of your life. The Bible says that God created us in the first place because God is a God of love. Man is made in the image of God.
Come on, let's go. You know, we make a big deal of baptisms here as we make a big deal of salvation, and the reason is because it's helped propelling the story of what Jesus is continuing to do to this day. Amen? Next week when we baptize 17, 18, I don't know, Cliff's like praying for just a rando to come up. I'm like, they got to do a class, bro. So maybe we'll do the world's fastest class and then get them in the tank. I don't know. But the reason that's so exciting is you're watching, 17 people declare to the world, this is my king. This is who I serve. I want you to know him and join him and follow him and be lifted up by him and then purposed through him. And so I invite you, if you're here for the first time, if you didn't have plans to come back next week, please come back, join us. We're going to celebrate that, and it's honestly going to be a phenomenal time. Okay, we are now into Mother's Day. I just want to say, moms, thank you. For without you, no one would actually be here, right? Like, thank you, moms. Fathers too, truthfully, we all need each other. But the truth of it is today, our culture has said, hey, we're going to take one day, we're going to honor moms, we're going to take another day and honor dads. And so, it just sort of aligned. It wasn't one of those things that we had planned out, but God in his good grace was like, hey, you're talking fathers next week, let's talk mothers this week. Next week, we'll deal with sex and sexuality. Again, it's going to be kind of probably a PG-13 conversation, but I also think absolutely necessary, especially given our culture. Today, we're looking at motherhood. Last week I talked about fathers and I said, hey, anytime you're talking about these topics, the potential for wounds or hurt or just kind of difficult situations dealing with pain that you've gone through with your own mom or that you feel as a mom or that you feel not being able to become a mom, there's a lot of things that can kind of spark in this. And so my goal today is really not to bash on motherhood, it's to elevate and to show what does God's word say of it. How does he speak of moms? And so my goal today is to really just give a lot of light to this topic and hopefully encourage those in here who are moms or will become mothers. To do so, we're going to be looking in Proverbs. Last week we looked at Proverbs for the men. This week we're looking at Proverbs for the women. And I'm going to go ahead and ask you to stand as we read his word. And we're going to be reading from Proverbs 31, specifically verse 21. And it says this, she is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Father, we come to you right now, and we ask that you would use this word for their glory and our joy. Specifically for those in here who are mothers or will become mothers. I ask, Lord, that you would strengthen them as you speak in your word of dignity and strength being her clothing, that she would laugh at the time to come, and ultimately for the glory of your name. We ask this, Jesus, in your name. Amen. You may be seated. In preparing for this, I was having conversations with my wife, and one of the things we talked about is, what types of things do we tend to engage in a little bit of back and forth banter? And the number one thing, without a shadow of a doubt, is how much are we going to screw up the kids? Have you ever had that conversation? You just kind of look across from each other and you're like, man, I'm seeing a lot of my DNA coming out and it's not great. Like, my girls, I got 3 girls, 1 boy. If they start to go sideways on things, there's a little bit of Pacheco in them. I'm like, that's trouble. That's going to mean even more trouble down the road. And then you see certain aspects of her personality coming out. And so you've got this nitpicking side where she's constantly internally not enough. She kind of feels like she needs to just get better at things. And then you've got my confident side, which, there's pros to that and then there's cons to that. Sometimes you're just confidently doing the wrong thing. Well, now you have a confident nitpicker, and it's like, who wants to be around that person, right? It's just a constant annoyance. And so I'm looking at the kids, and we'll have these conversations like, what are we doing to help mitigate or help drive or teach or train? And I'll often just tell Melinda, I was like, Melinda, we're going to fail them. We're going to fail them. Like, that bar for success as a father and mother is not perfection. It can't be. Like, if it's a day ending in Y, I will fail. Like, it's going to happen. But every time we have that conversation, Melinda, at least, it's a lot harder for her to get to that point because she's like, I don't want to fail them. I don't want them to have to go through the things we went through. I don't want them to have to stumble their way through or make their way through the treacherous couple early years that we had in our marriage, which they were. And so there's a sense there where I'm starting to notice a tendency, and that is, for most of us fathers, and I talked about this last week, when we try something and we fail, oftentimes our temptation is to just be like, well, I tried it, I'm never trying it again, right? Like, that was a waste of time, not doing that. For a lot of moms, you'll come across something that's hard, difficult, you'll fail, and then the expectation you place on yourself is, I need to be perfect. I need to conquer this. I need to make sure my children are, or my job is, or my marriage is. And just that you ratchet up the expectation on your heart. Now, and I get it, not all moms are like that, not all dads are like that, but generally speaking, I tend to see this. And one of the ways that it comes out most profound usually is with children. Am I enough? And when I see my failures, what do I do other than ratchet up and try to be more? Well, today my hope is to kind of lift that burden off of your shoulders, moms, and to point you back to what God says of you and how he speaks over you. It begins with this. The joy of motherhood is his provision, not being perfect. I feel like a lot of moms, they come in and they're looking across the landscape of people and women their ages and children their kids' ages, and they're thinking, I'm a failure. What have I done wrong? I need to level up. And then they'll get onto a phone like this and start scrolling through pictures that doesn't help the process. Like, no matter what you think, nobody's spending 24/7 on a beach, right? But why is that all the pictures we're seeing? Why are all the kids flourishing? The meal's perfect. The job, you're getting it done perfectly. It's made up, it's fake, it's false. And yet those expectations, I believe, drive so many of our mothers. And the job of mothering is already difficult. But you add that layer on and all of a sudden, you're no longer enjoying. You're no longer finding joy in his provision. You're too busy trying to be perfect. So today, mothers, I'm going to give an invitation for you. Where do you need to lay it down before him? And once again, hear the voice of God, how he speaks over you. We're going to look to our text now. It says this in verse 21. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. Now, it's what the text doesn't say or what it insinuates that I'm actually keenly interested in. Take a look with me. It says she is not afraid. Well, anytime you see a sentence or a statement like that, it's assuming that there are things to be fearful of. In this case, she's not afraid of the snow. There's something that's going to happen. Her children and her husband needs to be clothed well. In Israel, in the ancient Near East, similar climate to us, a little bit higher in elevation, but effectively, they didn't get snow all that often. If they did, it was usually just a dusting, but once or twice every few years, they would get a fairly heavy snow. And so what's happening is she is prepared for the unexpected. She is no longer fearful of when things just kind of come up in the night. And I would say that for most mothers, what's driving you is the fear of not being enough. Am I insufficient in my task for my job? Am I insufficient in my task for my children? Am I insufficient in my task to be a good friend? Am I insufficient to make sure the home is well cared for? Am I insufficient to make sure my children are doing what they need to do and growing in the ways they need to grow? Am I insufficient as a friend? One of the things that Melinda and I will talk through often is battling that insufficiency mindset. She just kind of feels like she's a failure for everything. And she's not an overly critical person of herself. I think it's just the life you're in. The demands of motherhood are constant, and if you're honest, you're never going to be able to achieve all of them. And so you can read a verse like this and just kind of assume, yeah, well, this is another girl that's just constantly killing it, and I'm not. But I would say, no, let's hone in on this. What's driving this person isn't fear. What tends to drive a lot of our hearts is fear. It's worry. It's concern. It's this nagging we have that we're insufficient as we are. And here, we're going to see how that then goes into various areas of her life. Look with me in verse 22. It says, she makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and she delivers sashes to the merchants. So now what we're seeing is three areas kind of given a microscopic view of how these things tend to play out. And really what it is when fear's driving you, comparison's not far behind. When fear's driving you, comparison is often that eye that's looking around saying, who else is doing it better? Who else am I not measuring up to? We notice in verse 22, clothing comes up. And it's the idea that sometimes can grip your heart saying, am I fitting in enough? Do my kids' clothing, because sometimes it's not even just your own personal clothing. Do my kids fit in? Do I look like the other women I want to be around? And do I impress the other women that I'm wanting to impress? You can get a comparison eye, and then all of a sudden everything you do doesn't seem to measure up to all the other standards you placed upon yourself. I should be better shape physically. I should have better meals weekly. I should have better rhythms mentally. My kids should be further along developmentally. All of a sudden, you're looking around. The comparison game is winning. It says this, her husband is known in the gates. Sometimes you're looking around and all you have to look is just to the person snoring next to you on the bed. And before he's even gotten up, you're having a battle. And the battle is one of, did I marry the right guy? Is he enough? Do I even respect him? Is our marriage even good? And by the time he's waking up from hitting his snooze button, there's all-out warfare happening in your brain. And he didn't even know it was happening, but he's about to find out. He's going to wake up and realize everything's wrong. And he's going to want to go back to bed. It's like, you know what? It was peaceful there. Why does this happen? Because your brains are constantly spinning, especially moms. I need to be what? Perfect. I need to kill it at this, my children. I need to kill it at my work. If I can't figure out how to be the best mom and the best employee, if I can't figure out how to make the perfect meal every time, if I can't throw off the perfect guest, if I can't have my house cleaned always, I'm a failure. Now here's the thing, you won't say those words, but you'll feel those words. I've counseled far too many couples and women who have confided and confessed feeling just absolutely worthless when they're far from it. Lastly, we see this. She makes linen garments and she sells them. She's what? Industrious. There's a trend today on TikTok and also within Instagram of women who are having multiple children and somehow finding the ability to earn what is a sizable side income. Like when your side income's 6 figures, it's no longer just a side income. And you'll watch that online and you'll think, man, I need to do a lot more than what I'm doing. Like you've got these moms who are taking care of the kids and selling jewelry and whipping their own butter and they look perfect and you're like, I'm a failure. No, it's called lying. That's what that is. And yet you will scroll through it and it's the doom loop. And you know what that is? That's just where you keep scrolling and feeling worse. And it happens. And it happens to guys, but specifically with moms, I think most men, just quite honestly, if we've tried it once and it didn't work, we're good to never try it again. Like, well, that's done. Not doing that. For the ladies, they tend to just, no, I'm going to put more and more and more weight and expectation on my shoulders because I don't want to fail. Let me just say this. Joy is rarely found on the other side of comparison. When you spend your days circling the drain of everyone's images around you, hoping that in the end you'll feel okay about yourself, it rarely ever does. And why? Because you were not designed to be in front of an audience. You were designed to be in front of one. And his name is Jesus. And it's what he speaks over you and it's what he speaks in you that is going to propel you to be faithful as a mother. It's going to propel you to be faithful in those times of trial. It's going to propel you to be honest in the failure, and it doesn't have to destroy you, because guess what? God is still the God of you in your weakness and your strength. See, we often live looking around, comparing, thinking I should be killing it at home, at work, with my marriage, with my children, and I'm not. And it's one of the greatest ways the enemy wants to take your attention off of Jesus and back onto you. Look with me, though. Here's why this doesn't work. We see it in verse 25. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. As I was processing this with Melinda, she said this verse has always been her favorite verse in all of Proverbs 31. And I asked why. She said this line, she laughs. It's hard to laugh, moms, when you're being choked out by your own guilt or lack thereof. She's clothed in strength and dignity. That clothing does not come from her ability to procure those things on her own. No, she knows whose daughter she is. She's the daughter of the Most High King. And that is what allows her and equips her to laugh at the coming, what? Troubles, as much as the coming triumphs. See, this world's going to tell you, once you have everything perfectly controlled, then you can finally be free. Laughing doesn't come because there's nothing ahead. Laughing comes because you see what's ahead, but you know who's in charge of it. Ladies, your first and foremost idea is not going to be to rest in your own strength. And it's not allowing the world to tell you your voice, to speak over your voice and say this is what you should be. No, it's to recognize his provision is enough. Why is this big idea so important? Because you will wrestle with this. You'll hear it, you'll understand it, and then you'll go on through your day, and then all of a sudden you'll see something that somebody sends you, and you'll begin the slide and cycle of comparison and wondering, how will I ever add up? And it's one of the tools that the enemy uses to lock you down. As Melinda and I were talking through this, it's often one of those moments where we start to discuss, hey, how do we help each other? How do we grow each other? How can my voice propel you to what is true? And similarly, how can her voice compel me to what is true of me? One of the primary ways I can do with Melinda is I can look at her and simply speak life over her. I can say, you are a daughter of the Most High King. Your failures don't have to equal God's faithfulness. That he is faithful even when we fail. He is faithful even when we falter. And sometimes it's our failures that he's going to use to what? Help our kids grow. Do you know that there's moments where sometimes when we sin against our children, that what that's done is given us an invitation and an opportunity to confess that sin? And by your children seeing that you're human, by your children seeing that you're not perfect, what you're doing is inviting them to also be honest about their imperfections. What you're inviting them to do is to say, hey, here's how you deal with life when it doesn't go according to what you wanted. Here's how you deal with life when you're the one who's causing the failure. You bring it before the heavenly King who's already called you son and daughter. It means we no longer have to hide behind it. It means we no longer have to avoid it. Our weaknesses don't have to be the thing that continues to bog us down. We can confess it. And ultimately, it leads to the big idea here, which is found in verse 30. Look with me. It says this, charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who what? Fears the Lord is to be praised. There are many fears in this world, and not all of them are bad. Let me say that again. There's many fears in this world, and not all of them are bad. Trial will hit. The pregnancies don't go according to plan. The children have trouble in school in ways that you never assumed. The marriage can go through rocky seasons. The friendship circles can somehow fray and be dislodged. Family, which was supposed to be this most life-giving aspect of your life, now begins to cause more pain than it solves. And all of a sudden there's fears that are rising up. Fears of, I need to control this, I need to hold this, I need to make sure we're moving forward. And what soon begins to happen is that fear is now driving you. in an effort to control everything, you're not experiencing any of the joy of the Father because you haven't allowed it to be in his hands. Here's what happens. A woman who fears the Lord isn't in the absence of fearful things. Fear is happening. Yes, I see that my kids have needs. I see that the marriage has needs. I see that my own life has needs. I see that there are things on the horizon. There are going to be problems if I don't. But in that moment, rather than running and trying to fix in that moment, you quiet yourself down and you say, but Lord, I know whose hand they're in. Women, one of the things that you'll learn to do as you become great mothers in this world is not in the absence of fear, but in the midst of fear, learning how to settle your own heart and lay it at the feet of Jesus. Saying, I don't have to be the one that makes this thing or forwards this thing or moves this thing or controls everything. No, I can lay it before him. I'm free to do so. Why? Because I trust he's a greater provider. The invitation here is one of trust, not lack of trial. I'll put it this way. It's not the lack of trials in this world, but who you trust that makes the biggest difference. The scary things will continue to come. The challenges will continue to come. The enemy will continue to pound and he'll continue to move against you, and you're going to be tempted in that moment to try to resolve every conflict, every piece of pain. But if there's one thing I can give you, ladies, is one thing I can give you, mothers in particular, is that you will not be able to, in your own strength, meet all the demands of it. You can't. It's laying it before him and recognizing you're not a failure because you're human. You're a daughter. And he's elevated you as a daughter. He says, you're a daughter of me. And I will speak light and life over you. I see the family. Would you rest it in my hands? I see the marriage. Will you rest it in my hands? I see your job. Will you lay it in my hands? I see the children. Will you lay them in my hands? And as you learn to do so, here's the thing. You're now telling a story for other women that need to hear that story. Mothers, one of the greatest voices you have in this world is to help propel that next generation of what it means to be faithful, of what it means to not constantly consume and compare, of what it means to not look around at everybody and think, I need to measure up, but already know as a daughter, you're measured according to a different standard. What it means to be faithful as mothers is in many ways transmitting that faithfulness to the next generation. Helping younger mothers see, helping younger children see, helping them understand they can trust when the fearful things come. And here's how he strengthens us to do it. Look with me. It says, she opens her mouth with wisdom. Teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. It's very easy to look at a list like this and think, okay, just more to-dos. More areas I need to crush it in. More areas I need to make sure I'm enough. And what you don't understand when you're looking at it that way is this isn't a list of things to go after. No, this is the outcome of when you fear the Lord. When he becomes your aim, when his voice is the voice you listen to and not every other, when you settle yourself before him and acknowledge himself as he will provide what I need when I need it for the purposes he's given. These then become the outflow of a life lived in that principle. Let me take a look. Verse 26, she opens her mouth. The thing you're going to notice with this is what is coming out of that mouth is what? Wisdom and kindness. When we think about wisdom and kindness, oftentimes we're just thinking about somebody who's saying really pleasant sayings in a very kind way. That's not at all what this text is getting at. What this text is getting at is you know warfare. You've seen how the enemy goes after your children, goes after marriages, goes after identity, and yet you've learned the voice of the Father and you're speaking that to the next generation. You're raising your daughters not to trust in the cultural devices. You're raising your daughters and sons to what? Heed the voice of the Lord. That's what it means to propagate wisdom. And you're doing it in kindness. You haven't let your heart go to that bitter place. All of us have been around people where all of a sudden the challenges of this world have caused them to become so bittered, so jaded to the things of God that they're hardly of use. Mothers, one of the areas that you will be a blessing to this generation and generations forward is by giving that wisdom in kindness. Your mouth is a powerful tool. Verse 27, it says that she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Many of the ladies that we engage with in this church, They're not idle at all. They're running around. They're running around crazy. Their schedules are packed. They're full. But what ends up happening oftentimes is they are looking for someone to support them. They're looking for, well, husband's out. I've got to take care of the kids. I got to get the meal and I got to work. And how do I do all of this? And what I see today is it's not this idleness of like, we're just wasting time. It's more of I'm going to do it alone. Women who will look at their homes and look at their jobs and they'll look at their kids, and rather than seeing that they were invited to do this in a shared community, cut off the community. Knowing they need to be supported, rather than supporting others, they just hold back. It's one of the areas that I think we have the greatest ability to make a change and an impact within the local church, by the way. It's one of the areas that I think we have the greatest incentive for cross-generational pollination, for older women to use their mouths with wisdom to pour into those younger moms who are in the thick of it. Younger moms, to open your home and open your doors. You don't have to have the living room looking perfect to invite someone in. Sometimes there's toys. Sometimes there's puke. Sometimes there's both. And you just need a friend to come in, and you're like, but I needed to look away. No, it doesn't need to look like TikTok. Just invite them in. Why is this so important? Because you were not allowed, and not designed to do this alone. You weren't. You're not enough on your own. You weren't designed to be. How do we support one another? How do you continue to push in? That idleness, again, I don't believe that's one today where I see the ladies not pushing in. I see them just trying to do it alone. Verse 28, her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. What's happening here? A lot of times you'll put an impossible standard on yourself. My kids need to be perfect. My husband and my marriage needs to be perfect. And I know I'll do it correctly if I'm getting praise from both of them. If that's your aim, then you're missing the heart of this text. What happens in the heart of this text is as you navigate the challenges and that face you, as you do things imperfectly, as you're honest and you confess the areas of weakness, as you look at the Lord and remain centered before him, what you're doing is you're sharing a story of his faithfulness to your children and to your husband. This becomes the outflow of what happens when you've learned not to fear the things that are fearful. I'll give you an example of this. When Melinda and I were early on in our marriage, a lot of tensions, a lot of trials. There was things about her personality that I really grated with, and likewise her with mine. But as we've gotten further in marriage, as we now enter year 15, we'll celebrate 15 in January, what's happening is a lot of those things that were early on annoyances, I've come to really appreciate. Melinda was never a person who was just like easily giving verbal affirmation. And I was like, why don't you affirm me? She's like, I don't know how. I can serve you. I'm an acts of service person. I was like, I just need a verbal affirmation person. But what's amazing is over time, what's happened is as she has developed and as I have developed, it's not that she's become more of a words of affirmation person. She gives words of affirmation. But she's taught me to seek my affirmation in the Lord and not in any other voice. And there's times I'll look at her and I'll praise her for the way God has made her and that she's walked faithfully in that. That didn't even start to happen until like year 10. It was like barely. It's like on a good, weird day where I woke up and I didn't know what was going on. Now, I see it more consistently. Ladies, sometimes you start the fight and you're thinking with your kids and your husband, I need to crush it now. No, you need to be faithful in the failures because you're playing the long game. You're allowing God to grow your heart and character. You're allowing him to develop you in your weaknesses. You're remaining strong as you hold on to his feet, and you're going to have a story to tell. You're going to have an up-close experience with Jesus, and you'll be able to say, here's what his voice sounds like. Here's what his voice doesn't sound like. The aim of you is fear of the Lord. In closing, I'll give this brief story, but I think it will help kind of tie it all in. Lynn and I, about I don't even know now, 5 years ago, as we were looking at what do we do with the children as far as schooling, and it was all during the COVID stuff as well, and so we were like, well, let's just try homeschool and see how it rolls. Well, it rolled in a really aggressive way. We had 4 kids under 6, and there came a moment where I kind of looked at her and she kind of looked at me, and I'm like, what do you want to do? And she's like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I'm like, that's what I was hoping you'd say. It just seemed like all out anarchy, and I'm not sure which side was winning, but it wasn't us. And I was like, why don't we just kind of explore options? But the amount of weight she put on her own shoulders to be this homeschool mom, I never put it there. We never even really talked about it. But she just felt so much weight that this is what I need to do, and I need to be able to make sure meals are on the table and they're all clothed and no one's biting anybody and you're doing okay. And I'm like, I don't know if we're going to have walls by the end of this day. Like somebody might go through them, me included. And we started to pray and we started to kind of unpack that, and really what began to show itself was there was just this pressure, I need to be everything. And as we pulled some of those layers back, we just started asking questions of like, what would be helpful in this season? What would allow us to kind of move forward? What takes the ways you're wired and takes the responsibilities you have and actually blends the two so it makes sense? And so we began to process, and we started looking, and we put them into a school one year, and we kind of knew that wasn't the right fit. We were like, it's working okay, but we really want them home more often. And we just started praying like, Lord, is there any kind of like hybrid option where they do like 3 days on and 2 days off? And that's what? There is. Didn't know that. When I was growing up, it was just public school, or you were the weird kid churning butter somewhere, right? Like in a field. So I was public schooled. So if you got problems with me, that's probably where it came from. There's options now. And all of a sudden we found the school, and there were 3 days on and 2 days off, this hybrid thing. And I was like, should we try this? And she's like, let's try it. It's a far distance, but let's try it. And it's worked. It's worked. It gives her the time with the kids during Wednesday and Friday to kind of do in school, at home, and time to be social. And anyways, my point in saying this is as we processed through and we came to conclusions, we began to realize, hey, sometimes there's just expectations you're putting on you that you don't have to be under. There's ways forward, and how do we process through being faithful to what God's called us as far as raising those children, but also be faithful to where we're at in this season? And moms, what I want to do is I just want to take that weight off, and I want to say, would you go to God? And husbands, what I would encourage you to do is lead her in that. If you see the noose of expectation choking out your wife, remove it. And walk with her to say, hey, how do we be faithful in the season that God's given with the tools that God's given us? And lastly, I just want to speak. There's some ladies in here, you don't have husbands. He either left or he was never in the picture to begin with. And you might come to a sermon like this and think, man, what is there for me? And here, there's a ton for you. God's the good father. And is your circumstance less than ideal? Absolutely. But will he meet and sustain and bring you through it? Yes. And the church is actually one of the best places because it allows your children to get around other safe men who can somehow take that father figure role and be around without being a threat. The church is in existence to do multifaceted work, meet, be friends, hang out, bear responsibilities, but sometimes also to provide a dad or to provide a mom if the case is switched around. Church, we have a blessing, but we're only going to do it as we meet the challenge and lay our own lives before him and ask him, Lord, how would you have me respond? And that's kind of where we're going to get to our challenge. Look with me now. I've been doing this Made for More challenge. And over the last 4 weeks, or last 2 weeks, we got 2 more weeks in this, I've been asking you the same 2 things. I said, meet with the person you want to be more like, and then meet with the person you want to pour into. And it's happening. It's happening. I was having a conversation with a lady just earlier this week, and she's like, my phone has been off the hook basically since you made that challenge. You kind of opened up the floodgates. I said, what does that even mean? What did I open up? She's like, well, you put the challenge out there and now it's going. People are starting to meet. I said, praise God. Because you younger ladies, some of you You just need to have an older voice around you that's saying it's okay. You older ladies, sometimes you're thinking, I'm of no use. How could God possibly use me? You're not recognizing the gift that God's given you. You know what it's like to remain faithful when everything blows up around you. You know that the kids don't all stay at 3 years old for eternity. They grow. And they grow with different challenges. We as the church are only going to be able to be faithful to what God's called us as we actually are the church. Which means we're not just coming in on Sunday morning. We're getting to know each other. We're pouring in and building in. And by God's grace, it's happening. But if that's not you yet, or if you've been on the fence, or you're kind of wondering, I'm encouraging you. You got one more week where I'm going to give the challenge. Move in faith. And if you don't know someone, that's often a good indication. I need to serve on a team or I need to get into a group. Because if you don't connect for a long period of time, you're always going to stay on the sides or eventually end up leaving. God has so much more for you than to do either of those options. Lastly, I'm going to give a quick update for the 21 days of prayer. I said last week how we've been praying for a midweek space, an office space, something that we could do our youth and young adults and men's and women's and classes, and how God provided, and He provided in a massive way. And then I invited you to pray with us for 21 days. I'm going to encourage you, there's a card in your cup holder. Pull that out with me right now. Because I need to be, and you guys got to be aware of two things. We're asking for two things right now. On the first side is kind of giving you a little indication of where this building is. I've heard of stories of people driving over there wondering where this place is. I'm cool with that. Just don't blow anything up, but I'm cool with that. Just go over there and take a look at it. But I gave the call. We need to raise $150,000 to get all those spaces up. You got to get air conditioning units. You got to get drywall. You got to figure out your security systems and locks on doors. You got to furnish the building. You got to make a parking lot. You got to somehow deal with that backyard. And I said, hey, we need to raise 150. Praise God, 25% of that has already come in. 25%. But here's the thing, in order to get us to that full, I need all of us to participate, to lay before God and say, okay, above and beyond, what can I give to help meet the needs of this building? This building that, for one, is going to be a place where young men and women meet Jesus. Young families are saved because they have their marriages teetering on the rocks, but they're counseled by faithful pastors. People who otherwise are far from Jesus coming close to Jesus. I need you to pray over this. I need you to take this card, and I need you to act on it in accordance to what God's called you. On the back side of this is just as important. Some of you in here, and my phone has been lit up lately. It's, hey, I know a contractor, or hey, I'm a drywaller, or hey, I'm good at everything. Awesome. I need you to text partner to 51502. We're going to set up a meeting for all those people to basically gather in one spot and say, hey, if you've got skills, or you know someone who has skills, or you have proficiencies, or you're just a person who knows the code for whatever reason, you just studied that book, kind of strange, but we'll bring you in the room. Let's have you talk. We need all the people that God's given to Flatiron Church to come together and say, hey, how do we move forward to make the most of the resources that we have and also to be faithful to steward them well? And so we're going to invite you. If that's you, if you got insight or you just know how to swing a hammer really well, like you framed a house, come and be a part of this meeting. We probably want you there.